selected as the partner, we kind of went through this engagement period, and we really tried to learn what their objectives were and what we really need to do, because during the engagement period, you not only have to listen to what the client's objectives are, but also think about the methodology, because really the methodology will impact your results. So what we did, once they selected us, we created this timeline. But before I kind of take you through the timeline, I'd like to let Laura tell you a little bit about the objectives of the research and then why we built this timeline the way we did.
So what Kraft was hoping to glean was a true understanding of how our consumers are interacting with all our various touch points. So not only do we have a magazine, we also have a TV show up in Canada, we have a website, we have a weekly recipe, email newsletter, and we also wanted to understand how these various touch points fit in with our consumers' lifestyles, and if they did at all.
And so with that said, you can see that we started way back in November of '08, and we did the proposal. Once we were awarded the project, we really went into a team training. One of the things about ethnography and one of the things about Psyma is that we really try to adhere to a process when we go into the research. And the reason for the team training is to make sure anyone that comes from the client side actually understands what their role is, what they're supposed to do when they go into someone's home, so they don't offend anyone. So that was really critical. We did ethnographies in Canada in December, the perfect months to do it, right? Nice and warm up there. We ended up with a snowstorm when we did the Canadian synthesis session, another wonderful month, January. And then because we did Canada and the US, we had a different set of team that came to the US research. So we then went back and we did a training session with the US team. And we went into 3 markets in the US and finished up with our synthesis session in March. We had planned and had every intention on doing quantitative after this. In fact, Laura and I went through multiple revisions of a questionnaire. And what we learned after the ethnography was this was no longer even needed. So we tossed that questionnaire aside, and they had enough learnings to really go forward and make some changes to their channels that Laura had mentioned. So you can see coming up in November, we now have focus groups that we're going to be doing in Canada. And so those are in the process and works even as we speak. So you can see our timeline over this entire project has been very long. One of the things that is really important when you're working with a client as a vendor is that they bring something to the table and we bring something to the table. We all have our roles to play. Laura's going to go through what she feels the client brings to the table, and I'll go through what the vendor brings.
So the client's really responsible for bringing to the table a deep, rich understanding of the brand. You know it better than anybody possibly can. And so having a supplier also helps to bring some fresh perspective that you may not have. Additionally, having a vendor supplier helps to create an unbiased focus, so they don't go into the research with the same preconceived notions that the client team might, and they help to really keep us objective all the way throughout the project. And then third, I think it's just really better not to have to do the project alone. Having a team to work with you that's going to take the accountability for keeping us on task, keeping the project moving smoothly, it's great to have a partner.
Obviously, as a vendor, you know, it's really your role to dig deep and understand what the outcome needs to be when you finish up with the research. You don't want to go into the research just assuming you know the outcome or the objectives, and because that really hinders what you plan. And so that was one of the things Laura and I took some time up front. As Laura said, we're really the gatekeepers. We keep everything organized. We make sure things are moving smoothly, that recruiting's going well. That takes a lot off of Laura's plate. One of the things we learned, though, is to be able to communicate that. Because if you forget to tell them that, hey, we're doing this, you know, I think Laura called me once and said, gosh, where do we stand